radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Good evening. How you doing? Fade to Black is back. It is truly bespoke radio for the masses. Today's Tuesday, October 1st, 2019. 275 days into the new year, just 90 days left. And we are live from a bunker somewhere in the middle of beautiful downtown Burbank, California. I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States. Hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black for KJCR, the Game Changer Network, and KGRA, the Planet. I am your host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? How you doing? How you doing? All right. Yeah, we took yesterday off. We went out to Palm Springs for the weekend and hung out with our friends and had a little birthday party for Rita. It was an amazing weekend. Just amazing on all counts. And I was gifted this. Well, we all were. The official Church of Woo coffee mug. The Church of Woo. Man. River Moon coffee tastes extra special out of that mug. All right. So, yeah, we took yesterday off. We had to. We traveled back from Palm Springs yesterday. And let me just say this. That was the best night's sleep I had last night. Oh, man. So, but here we are. We're back. We've got a great week lined up. Tonight, Calvin Parker is here. The Pascagoula incident. I cannot wait. There are many, many, many seminal, huge events in UFO history, and Pascagoula is right there with all of them. And I am talking about Roswell, Betty and Barney Hill, Travis Walton, Rendlesham. These are, and Pascagoula, right? These are, the Lubbock Lights, the Phoenix Lights, very huge events. And Pascagoula is there. And tonight, Calvin Parker. On October 11th, 1973, 19-year-old Calvin Parker and his friend, 42-year-old Charles Hickson, were fishing on the Pascagoula River in Mississippi. In the early evening, both men were startled to witness a strange craft descend and hover a few yards away. And this became one of the biggest close encounters in history, the Pascagoula incident. Calvin Parker, seriously disturbed by these events, has largely remained in the background without ever detailing the full account of what happened that night, how it affected him in his life, and other close encounters he has experienced down the years, but has recently decided to come out into the public, which he has been doing over the last month and a half, to tell his story. And tonight he's going to do it in full. Tonight on Fade to Black, There you go. I'm going to welcome for the first time to Fade to Black, Mr. Calvin Parker. Calvin, good evening. How are you?
Doing great. How are y'all doing?
That's what I'm talking about, Calvin. Now, hey, okay, before we get started, this is the good stuff. Calvin, you get the first time guest disclaimer. Okay, so this is
okay.
Yeah, this is it. Calvin, it's just you and I sitting on my couch having a conversation as friends. Where the conversation starts, it starts. Where it ends, but we're going to end as friends. There you go. You ready?
I'm ready.
You know, Calvin, I am 56 years old. And and second part of that statement is my birthday is October 10th, by the way. So the day after my birthday, October 11th, 1973, I would have turned 10 years old. I was caught up in this just like everybody else was around the world. This wasn't a local Mississippi thing or a United States thing. This was an international news story that broke, and it broke fast. And I was witness to it. I'm glad that I was 10 years old. I was very interested in the subject at that time. But I watched this and you overtake the world. I kind of want to start there before we get to the event, okay? On that day, October 11th, your life is one thing, right? You're in control of it, right?
Exactly right,
yeah.
up until that evening.
Yeah. And then I don't have another way to put it except for all hell broke loose, didn't it?
I mean, and when it did, and it wasn't no stopping it. Ever since October 11th, that evening, it's been a whirlwind for the last 45 years.
The change that had to occur in your life, of course, you personally, but you've got your friends, you've got your family, and everybody around you is also affected by this, right?
Yeah, the biggest reason they were affected is I never talked about it until I decided to sit down last year and do this book.
Right.
And I'm glad I waited for 45 years to do it, because I couldn't have stood the rush of all this, very long at a time.
The way that the story broke out, and when you have, as with anybody, where you have your own little bubble, your own little world, your job, your family, you're set in your ways, and then something like this comes along. This is something that you didn't ask for, and you are forced into a change in your mind, a change in the way that you look at the world. A lot of questions were answered for you that some people don't ever get answered, and it's overwhelming. How did you manage to deal with it?
I actually didn't deal with it, I don't guess. I just kind of faded off. I've been a recluse for 45 years. I never talked to my family about it, nor my friends. Now, they knew about it, but they never asked me about anything until I got pressured by my wife and Philip Mantle into writing this book. If it hadn't been for that, I still wouldn't be saying nothing.
Well, the pressure from a wife is all you need.
That's all you need, gosh.
And how long have you been married?
45 years.
Hold the phone. Shut the front door.
I got married November the 9th of that same year, 1973. So here we coming up on November the 9th again. So that'd be 46 years, I believe.
That's incredible. The oldest statement in the world is, beside every man is a great woman. And she stood by your side for the last 45 years. Congratulations. That's incredible.
Thank you. But it hadn't been easy. I mean, we've had our road bumps, through the years and all. And I hadn't been the best husband in the world. I'll just be honest with you. And you have to deal with making a living. And then I was dealing with all this along with it. And the news media just about drove us crazy, because every time we'd move, they'd track us down and hunt us like vultures.
Right. And it was always the same questions, too, probably, that you've answered so many times before.
The same ones. But just because you answer them a certain way don't mean they're going to come out in the press a certain way. They're bad about changing things. A lot of the press was. And that was part of the reason for me sitting down doing a book, was because Philip told me when he contacted me about the book, I wasn't even planning on one, why don't you put it in black and white? Then nobody can change it. It's there. And, you know, he was right about that, I have to say. Now, it opened up another chapter in my life, but, you know, at least nobody's tried to change a story.
Well, you know, all of this, when it comes to Pascagoula, and in my opening statements in the show, there are a few, maybe a half dozen real seminal, with force, cases in ufology that we look back to and quote from and remember. And Pascagoula is one of them. You know, when you have Roswell or Betty and Barney Hill or Travis Walton or Rendlesham and Pascagoula, it's mentioned in the same statement. And it is very important to all of us to not only get this book out that you've just published and get it on the record, but it's a case that we don't know a whole lot about because of your silence. And I want to thank you for writing the book and taking the time to do that.
You know, when I started this book, that's like I told everybody, I don't have much education. But the deal I made with the publisher, Philip Mantle in the UK, I told him, I said, you know, Philip, I don't have an education, but the only way I'm going to do a book, I don't want a word corrected that I do. I don't want a punctuation mark put in. I want it just like I tell it, like it is. And as far as I know, he didn't change but one word in the book. And that was kind of funny. We'll get into that after a while.
I so want to know. What was the word, Calvin?
I was eating a bologna sandwich one day while I was fishing.
Right.
And he called it a blondie sandwich. And I guess that's what they eat in the UK. I don't know what. It's kind of foreign food, I guess they eat over there. I was supposed to make a trip, and I said, you know, Philip, my little redneck self's not going to make it good over there. I don't speak y'all's language because I don't understand your language in English too good, and I sure don't eat the same foods y'all do.
That is about as honest of a statement as ever been presented on Fade to Black. They do have fish and chips, though. They do have fish and chips. So
now that's what he said. They had, yeah, and you know that's pretty normal food there, I guess.
It is. It's pretty normal here.
Yeah,
I have it as often as I can. Well, let's do this. I have never spoken with you before. Well, I did earlier today, but I've never spoken with you before. And this is my opportunity. Like I said, this is you and I sitting on my couch. So if you're sitting on my couch, the first thing that I'm going to say to you, besides would you like to have a cold drink, would be what happened that day. So because I want to hear this from you directly. And so when we go back to that day, and you've had plenty of time to just think this over, and certainly writing the book, did the morning of October 11th feel any different than any other day?
Absolutely not. Let's go back the day before when I got to the coast.
Sure.
What happened, I was working in the oil field in Laurel, Mississippi, putting in about 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's just the way the oil field was back then. I got tired of that, so I called a friend of my father's, which is Charles Hickson, and asked him if he needed some help, that I was fixing to get married in November. And he said, yeah. So he said, come on down. And this is October the 10th. I went down, rented a room from Charlie, and So this was actually my first day there. It was October the 10th.
Mm-hmm.
I took my physical and everything. And then October the 11th, the day started us going to work. We got to the shipyard probably at 6 o'clock. And of course, they don't have time clocks at these factories and shipyards down here. They give you a piece of brass with a number on it. And you hand it back to them and, you pick it up. That's your time card. They write it down when you do that. So we pulled up to the shipyard and I brassed in. And everything looked to be going good. For October, it was pretty warm still for an October down here. It was probably in the 80s, 88 degrees then. And we worked all day. We got ready to get off work, and Charlie said, look, why don't we go fishing this evening? I said, well, okay. I said, but Charlie, I didn't bring my fishing equipment with me. I wasn't planning on fishing. He said, look, I got some you can use, and we'll go by my house and pick it up. Now, in the South, you don't borrow a man's fishing equipment. You just soon take his firstborn.
Right.
Instead of getting his fishing equipment. I said, well, I don't know, but yeah, let's do it. It'll be nice. So we got off work, and we rode to his house and picked up some fishing equipment. And about 15 minutes from where he lives in Pascagoula, Mississippi, we took a little ride to what they call the grain elevator, where they unload this grain off these ships and it falls off in the water and the fish come up and meet the grain. But that night the bugs were so bad till you just couldn't stay. Unless anybody's from the coast down here or Louisiana, they got what they call them no-sims. You can't see them, but they got a mouth the size of a fruit jar.
That's right.
And they terrible. So we was fighting the bugs off. He said, I know somewhere there's not any lights and things to draw these things out here. Let's go over to this old abandoned shipyard, the Shaw Peters Shipyard, and try to do a little fishing. I said, well, that sounds good. I said, it's getting late. I could go on to bed right now because I had traveled down the day before, still hadn't rested up. He said, well, let's go try them a little bit there. So we did. We left and we got to this place called the Shaw Peters Shipyard, and it was an old abandoned shipyard. And the first thing I noticed when we got there was a no trespassing sign. I said, Charlie, we can't fish here. We'll be trespassing. We don't need to go and mess up like that. He said, well, don't worry about it. I come here all the time, and there's no security or nothing here. I said, well, next thing I want to know, don't they ever police this place up or pick up anything or this trash? Because it was trash laying all over the shipyard. He said, no, let me tell you what's happened. The tide comes in and the water gets high, and it deposits this stuff up here. Then when it goes out, it leaves it. So we had quite a mess to walk through just to get to the pier. We was probably a couple of 100 foot from the pier, but it took a good 15 minutes to get in through there for going over the marsh grass and the debris that was laying around.
Right, right.
So we got to the pier, and there was no log, and we pulled it up, and we was sitting down, and I cast it out, and he was getting ready, or he might have done been out. And I was looking across the river, and there was an old Coast Guard ship or maybe a NOAA ship or something that was there. Mm-hmm. And in my mind, I was thinking, I just went to work at the shipyard. I've been handling the steel all day long, and this stuff's heavy. How does a steel ship float?
Right.
So
right.
That's where my mindset was right then.
What time was this?
This was getting on, let's see, probably about 6 o'clock in the evening.
Okay.
And the sun was already down, but the moon was bright, one of the brightest moons I've ever seen around here. And I was sitting there watching the ship, and I noticed some blue lights coming from behind us, reflecting out across the water. So that got my attention because I thought we was trespassing and the law was coming to either run us off or lock us up. And I turned and looked at Charlie. Of course, he looked at about the same time. I said, if I go to jail, you're going to have to pay to get me out. I didn't want to come here to start with. He said, well, don't worry about it. It ain't the law. And so we turned and looked at the same time. And that's when these hazy blue lights was reflecting out behind us, probably a couple of 100 feet. And all of a sudden, it just got bright. It's like a big spotlight came down on you. One of the brightest lights I've ever seen in my life. And what that was the door of this craft opening up, and this light looked like it was coming from inside this craft. So it was kind of blinding. Now I noticed something coming toward us, but I really couldn't make it out. And I didn't know what to do. Actually, I was kind of wanting to get out of there. And I said, thinking to myself, when they got a little closer, these three robotic-looking beings was floating in toward us. And they was probably 5 foot tall, bulky. They didn't have a neck. Their head just sat down on their shoulders. And my first thought was just throw Charlie out there to him and haul butt.
That's what you thought. Now,
yeah.
Really quick, Calvin, you were 19. How old was Charles?
Charles was 42 years old then.
Now, you're supposed to have respect for your elders, man. You're not supposed to throw him at the...
I would have put him out there in a minute if I had thought about it.
Oh, man. Okay. So you could see, a couple of really quick questions. Did you get an idea of how big the craft was? I know that the light's coming at you, right? So then... It would darken everything behind it, but did you get a view of what was there?
I didn't get the view until they got ready to leave,
right? And
then it looked about 90 to 100 foot long.
So it was pretty big.
It was big,
and it was already there. And in other words, you didn't see it land. This all happened behind you. The blue light was the door opening. Right? So it snuck in, didn't it?
It just kind of slipped up on us. And actually, I don't understand. As bad as that debris was, it might have even been sitting there when we got there, but I don't think so.
Right.
Because I pulled my car up. Where I was parked was about 50, 75 foot from where it was sitting.
Incredible. And so now, but this happened so fast in that now the door's open, this bright, blinding blue light is facing you. And through the blue light, these three beings show up. You have described them, and I've seen the drawings. We'll get to that in just a bit. But you've always described them as robotic. And is that what you were thinking at that time, or has this thought come in over time?
Well, they moved mechanical like at the time, and I've always thought they was probably robotic. To be honest, I thought maybe a bunch of old rednecks was out drinking, and they was doing an experiment at the shipyard, and they stole something from there. Because they build all kind of craft down there.
Right.
And they was just going to have some fun with us.
So what happened next?
Well, these beings come up. Well, we was both turning around looking, and by then. And two of them got a hold of Charlie, and one of them got a hold of myself. Well, immediately, when he reached and grabbed my left arm, I heard a little rush of air. Kind of like a real quick. It was not loud, just that. And I felt an injection in my arm. Well, I'm kind of glad of that because that injection seemed to settle me down. And later, this was proven in blood work and by Dr. Bosco here at the Jackson County Hospital. So when he injected that stuff, it more or less paralyzed me. Now, I could see, I could smell, I could hear, I could roll my head a little bit and roll my eyes a little, but I couldn't move. I couldn't resist if I wanted to. But it's one of them, I don't give a dang shots, because I didn't care at that moment what they done with me. That's just the effect it had.
Right. I went through that this weekend at a party in Palm Springs, but that's another story for another time. I totally get it. Now, you were relaxed, but on the inside, were you having, like a holy crap moment? Were you realizing, how frightening this really could be?
Yeah. In modern terms, I figured I'd done messed up real bad.
Right.
And to be honest, coming from Mississippi and the cotton fields and all, I never heard of UFOs or aliens or nothing. And the only thing I heard, we had 3 channels on TV, NBC, ABC, and CBS at the time. And I kept up with Apollo missions because you had to. Either that was on or the president was talking. You was going to watch that on all 3 channels.
Right.
And I noticed that when these astronauts landed, the big thing that was in my mind at the time to set the mindset, they isolated them. They wouldn't even let their families in there to see them for 7 days. Now, I knew something bad was going on, but it was nothing I could do about it. So this thing got a hold of my arm, did the injection, floated me up to the door. And the first thing I was thinking when we got to the door, now I didn't see Charlie anymore till we got back out. I was wondering where these lights was coming from. So I kind of looked up a little bit, looked around, with my eyes just kind of rolled in and look around, rolled my head. And it looked like they was just coming out of the paint in the walls. That, and it could have been some kind of optical illusion or something. I don't know, but I didn't see any kind of light fixtures.
Mm-hmm.
So this thing got me to the door, and he turned left, and we went down a hallway, and I don't know how far, but it didn't seem like it took long. And then he made a right turn, and there was this room, and it had one of the prettiest tables I've ever seen in my life in there. And when I say that, I'm talking examination table.
Mm-hmm.
And it was clear. It was like glass. And, I was almost afraid when he laid me on it, it was going to break or something. And this thing scooted me over, and he laid me on this table at about a 45-degree angle, or around a 16 to a 45-degree angle. And this big ugly thing just backed up out of the way and went to the wall and just stood by the wall motionlessly. And that was another thing I decided that it was robotic, because it just went over there and just shut down. And I could see by rolling my head a little bit what it was. But when I was on this table, I was looking straight up at the ceiling for a second. And there's something about the size of a deck of cards that that came out from the ceiling and come down and stopped about a foot and a half from my head. And it started going around my head, and it was clicking. It'd go click, 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 click. Then when it got to one spot in front, it stopped, and then it just shot back up into the ceiling.
Let's stop right there, Calvin. We need to take our commercial break, and we will continue from right where we're leaving off when we come back after this short break. Our guest tonight, Calvin Parker. This is Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. You can follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. All of the links for Calvin are over at jimmychurchradio.com. You can go and click right there, and we'll be right back to continue this conversation after this short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Calvin Parker. His new book, you can go and click on the links over at jimmychurchradio.com. It'll take you straight there. I do want to thank Philip Mantle for all of his hard work in setting up tonight's show. Calvin, right before the break where we left off, you're in this, well, I guess we can call it an examination room. We don't have another word for it, but this object comes down from the ceiling about the size of a deck of cards. Sounds like it was taking pictures or something, right? Clicking around your head or examining you, and it was going click, click, click. And you describe one of the guys that was there that stepped up against the wall and like shut down like a robot, right? And now he's in position. Am I describing this? Is this about right?
You're exactly right. And I always called old robot the old big ugly one because we're fixing to see the pretty one come out here in a minute.
Okay, and the drawings that I have seen over the years, I don't know how to best describe them. I think I should let you do it. But it looks like it's almost like strings of rope or something like toothpaste out of a tube. You know, I don't know how to explain the skin or what would be on the outside of it. It's stringy. I don't know how to explain it. Can you describe it?
Well, yeah, I've described it several times. The old big ugly one now has skin kind of like an elephant or a manatee.
Okay.
You know, just kind of wrinkled and pulled down. And I'm not for sure that was a suit on this thing or what it was, but I figured it's some kind of protective clothing. For some reason, I really believe from the bottom of my heart that these robotic-looking creatures was the one doing all the work, you know, and doing this. But they had a mastermind behind all this, and she's fixing to come out of the picture here in a minute.
Right.
So we were at the deck of cards that went back up into the ceiling that clicked. Well, I was laying there, and I just kind of glanced over, and I noticed kind of a figure coming out, but I couldn't really make it out because I still couldn't move. And she got a little closer, and I called it a she. I don't know that it was a she. It was built smaller than the big ugly one. It looked like a female to me, and really not a bad looking woman if it was. It's kind of like I explained to somebody before. If I was in a bar and had enough to drink, I'd ask her out on a date. And, you know, that's how normal she kind of looked, if you can call that normal. I've seen weirder in bars. But she come out, and she was small-featured and kind of walked up to me, and I really couldn't see enough. You know, I was trying to roll my head and look at her, and she grabbed me by the cheek with one of her hands, and her hands looked normal. They had fingers and everything else, and she looked kind of normal, but I couldn't sense any kind of warmth or any kind of feeling in her fingertips. So when she got through there, she took her left hand and she laid one of her fingers across my chin, and she pushed it down. Now, this is when it got really bad for me. Then she run two of her fingers, and they was a little bit longer than normal, down my throat, and was trying to, you know, that little thing that hangs down the back of your throat?
Yep.
She was trying to come up behind it into my nasal cavities, I guess. And I started choking, and my nose started bleeding. But, you know, at this time, whether she was compassionate about it or not, she did pull her hand out and give me a chance to kind of breathe again. So I don't think intentionally they really meant to hurt me. Now, later on, I think they might have, but right at this moment, she didn't intentionally want. It was more like an exam. And somebody said, well, she might have put an implant in. Well, I don't want to speculate on all that because I don't know for sure. I never got an X-ray or nothing that showed one, but it could have possibly been that.
You had mentioned earlier, Calvin, that you could see and you could smell. What were you smelling at this point, and how was your breathing? Was that okay?
Well, with them fingers there in your throat, you don't breathe good.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
And as far as the smell now, anybody's ever been to Pascagoula, Mississippi, or Jackson County, they have pogie plants, and they cook these pogies, and there's dead fish up on the banks sometime, and it smells really bad at times, and that was one of these nights where the humidity was low, so you really couldn't sense anything but a dead fish when you were smelling.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that was coming in from the outside. And I've often wondered, if I could have sensed anything else. Of course, I wasn't wanting to sense anything. I just wanted to get up and leave, and I couldn't do it.
Right. Well, when you looked around the room, was there anything that stood out for you? Were there windows? Were there pictures on the wall? You know what I mean? What did you see? Electronic equipment? What did you remember?
The only electronic equipment I remember seeing was that deck of cards that come out of the ceiling.
Right.
Now, when I rolled my head and looked before she came out of, it seemed like it could have been windows there or maybe something they could see through. And I just had the feeling, that somebody was standing back behind. Now, I didn't see this. I couldn't tell it for sure. But it felt like somebody was just staring at you. You get that EBGB feeling sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the feeling I had.
In the room with you, we have the big ugly robot guy. We have her. Was there anybody else in there?
Nobody that I could see,
right,
or tell. And I had no idea where that buddy of mine was. I mean, really, he wasn't a friend of mine, but the guy that was with me, they might have took him to a different place or something, but he sure wasn't around in there with me.
Right. And, before I say what happened next, I want to, you're still clothed. You still have your clothes on?
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay. So were you cold? What was the environment in there? Were you uncomfortable?
I was very uncomfortable. It was colder than an air conditioner blowing on you. It about like walking into a emergency room in a hospital. They keep them places cold.
Right.
And you're really uncomfortable and chilled in there.
Now, and one last thing about your environment. What did you hear?
The clicking was the only thing I heard from that deal until she made a comment telepathically to me, and it sounded just like a normal voice. And it was in redneck language, and I'm sure that they probably studied the language and all, and to keep it from being so fearful.
Right.
They probably programmed her to send her thoughts in this language.
Now,
and it was just like talking to her.
Right. Now, Calvin, I have to ask you, in redneck language, these are your words, right? But I've been all over the United States. I lived in Memphis. I've been all over the South. I totally am picking up what you're putting down right now. Okay. Yes. What did she say in redneck?
Well, just in a plain voice, and her lips didn't move. Now, she had facial features like we do, ears, eyes, nose, mouth.
Right.
But she said that we're not going to harm you. And I thought, it's a little too late for that. You done took me against my will. Now, this is me thinking back, just wanting to really slam her if I could. You done took me against my will. You run a finger that was 6 inches long down my throat. You come up behind my little googler vein back there. And I was bleeding bad. My nose was bleeding. I had on a white T-shirt, and it was soaked in blood by then. And you know, the strange part about it, ever since that happened, I've had frequent nosebleeds. And I don't understand why. But she communicated with me. She said, we're not going to hurt you. We're not going to harm you. And then I was getting a little restless, and she made a little grumbling from the bottom of her throat. Now, somebody asked me to describe that the closest way I could describe it. And y'all, a lot of people probably won't know what this is, but an alligator's got a mating call, and it goes out. It's just a long whoop like that, but you can hear it for miles. And it's kind of like that. And she did that, and this big ugly thing that was sitting in the corner, he just popped up and come alive. And he come over there, and he reached and grabbed me by the arm again. And I felt another injection. Well, after that little injection there, I just really didn't care what went on. Not too much, but, you know, I could still see. I had my senses, my eyes, my hearing, my taste. I had all this. And I thought, now, I thought I had a little sense of smell of ammonia, but I'm not for sure about that. It might have been just something that I thought, that I dreamed up. And I try to stay as accurate as I can when I'm doing this. And this thing put another injection on me, and she kind of backed up against the wall then, or just backed up a little bit, and he snatched me up off that table and went to the door and floated me back out to where he had picked me up on the riverbank and set me down. My arms was outstretched in about the same place. I was facing the river and my arms outstretched. And this is when I heard Charlie saying, Calvin, you okay, son? I thought, well, no, I'm not okay, you know. And we turned around about the same time and looked. I turned around. Charlie was getting up off the ground. He was out there on the ground. And we looked, and this thing, the lights just kind of went off. And I heard just a little bit of a zipping noise, like zzz, like that. And it wasn't real loud or harsh. And it just took up and more or less disappeared into the sky. That's how fast it was. Now, this is just when the story starts.
I know. And how much time do you think actually went by from when you were casting out, when you saw the blue light on the water, to you seeing Charles again lying down on the ground? How much time went by?
I'm saying probably about 4 hours.
Whoa.
Well, because we got there about 6:30.
Right.
We got to the sheriff department about 11. So, no, it wouldn't have quite been 4 hours. They would give the sheriff department an hour or so to get us probably 3 hours.
Right. Now, before we move on, did you get a good look at the ship the second time?
I did.
What'd you see?
I got a better look at it because the lights went off and you could more or less see the outline shape of it.
Right.
And like I say, it was a harvest moon that night. So it was a good full moon. And I can make it out, the shape of it, not so much a color, but the shape. And it was shaped like a football to me.
100-foot football.
That's about what it is, you know. You just want to go kick it after that.
Right. No kidding. When you said it was just like gone, you know, just like that, are we talking about a second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, and that was it?
I would say 4 or 5 seconds at the most.
Right. Right.
When it got up in the air about 50 foot, it was just like a streak of lightning coming down.
Right.
And you could kind of see the glow of it leaving, and a lot of people witnessed it leaving. And that's where this new book comes in on all that.
Yeah. And so many people have come forward. We'll get into that in just a bit, which is absolutely some of the most fascinating parts about all of this. And like you said, this is just getting started, right?
Oh, yes, sir.
So, okay. Now, this is just me and you. I'm asking the dumbest question ever right now. You turn to Calvin, or you turn to Charles. What did you say? I mean, what did he say to you?
Charlie said, well, we need to call somebody and tell them. I said, oh, no, we don't call nobody. This didn't happen. I didn't see nothing, Charlie. Did you? He said, we got to call somebody and tell them. I said, no. We're going to get up in the morning to go to work. And I thought me and him had came to that conclusion that we just wasn't going to tell nobody. We was going to get up the next morning and go to work. But he had a different outlook on things than I did. So we sat there and talked just a few minutes, not about what happened. We were just kind of in a daze. We started working our way back to the car. Now, keep in mind, I had a brand new car, 1973 Rambler Hornet, less than 5,000 or 10,000 miles on it.
I had a 73 Rambler Hornet.
Oh, I love that little car.
I love that car. Love that car. It was pretty fast, too. Mine had a straight 6 in it.
That's what this one had in it. And it got good gas mileage. And, I enjoyed riding around it. First new car I ever had.
And it would go, too. That little straight 6 would go.
It'll scat.
It'll scat.
They made race cars out of them Novas. If I was them, I would have souped up these Hornets and made a race car out of them.
I miss my Hornet, man. I really do. I drove the life out of that car. Okay, so you guys make it back to your car, and at that point, I know you said that you haven't really discussed what happened, but certainly, do you remembered everything?
Oh yeah,
and same thing for Charles, right?
Yeah, he must have, because he talked about it.
He certainly did.
I mean, Charlie, he went national with everything. When we got to the car, of course, we didn't have it locked. I walked over to the driver's side, and he was on the passenger side. And I noticed the window looked different, but it was shattered in place. The 2 passenger side windows was lit up, and they were shattered in place. And then when he opened the door, that's when the glass just fell out. Now, I asked somebody, how come it's a shatter like that? And they said, well, it's safety glass, and they put that in there where it won't all fracture and come into you. And it just shatters, and there's plastic in there, and that's what it was. But when he opened the door, the glass fell out. We got in the car, and I tried to crank it. I must have wound up on that thing for 15 minutes. And I kept thinking the battery would go dead. But the battery never went dead or nothing. And eventually it cranked up a little bit, but it run a little rough, like it was kind of missing on a couple of cylinders.
Mm-hmm.
But I was ready to get out. I didn't care if it was missing or not. I was fixing to take off and go anyhow. So we got it busted off and headed back to his apartment. And there was a store there. Now, after 6 o'clock in the state of Mississippi, back then they had the blue laws. So the stores were pretty much shut down after about 6, and you couldn't get in and too much get anything. But we had good phones because they had pay phones that hung on the wall. It's not like it is these days where everybody's got a cell phone. They had pay phones, and they took a nickel and a dime. So he said, pull over here. I need to use the phone. Now, in my mind, I thought he was going to call his wife and tell her we'd be home in just a little bit because she was expecting us a little earlier to come home and eat. Well, neither one of us had any change, and I remember digging under the seat, and we eventually found some change that fell out of people's pockets, when they sat down.
Mm-hmm.
And he got that, and he went to the phone. I heard him talking. And he come back to the car. He said, well, they said call the local law enforcement, local sheriff department or something. I said, who said that, Charlie? He said, that was Keesler Air Force Base out of Biloxi, Mississippi. And they said they didn't deal with these UFOs or nothing anymore to call the local law enforcement. He said, I need another dime. And I was thinking, they going to come think he's an idiot and throw him in jail. And this, in the back of my mind, that's what they was going to think. So he went and he called the Jackson County Sheriff Department. And they said, look, fellas, y'all just stay right there where you are. We got a patrol car headed out to see y'all in just a minute. Well, I didn't leave after Charlie told me what they said. But in the back of my mind, the reason they said for us to stay there, I know they thought we was probably drunk or drinking, and they didn't want us on the road. So it was just a few minutes, and a patrol car pulled up to where we was parked at this store. Well, they got out of the car. Now, they didn't go over there on his side of the car and mess with him. I was the one driving.
Right.
Walked over and asked me to see my driver's license. I said, well, I got them, but I don't know. Well, we need to see them for ID and all. And he said, if you would, step out of the car. So I stepped out of the car. He said, now, look, follow this light. Follow it with your eyes. And I kind of followed it there a little bit, played along with him. And he said, now, what I want you to do is stand on one leg. I want you to bend your head back. Close your eyes, touch your nose, jump up and down on your left foot, and count from 100 backwards. I said, man, I can't do that sober, much less if I'd been drinking. He said, that's the point we want you to see. So I did all of his little sobriety checklist things that they normally do, I guess. And he said, follow us to the sheriff department. You can drive. And my intentions wasn't to do that. So we did. We followed them. Well, when we got to the sheriff department, they took Charlie into one room and took me into another room. And I guess they interrogated us both. And they asked me what had happened. I said, I don't know what y'all talking about, what had happened. He said, well, your friend told us that y'all got abducted by something. I said, y'all can't pay no attention to him. So I don't know what happened. Just let me go home. That's what I want to do. But little did I know now, they had another little interrogation room, and they slipped in there and they put a tape recorder into this room. And they brought me out, and they brought him out, and they put us in the same room together so they could tape our conversation and us not knowing. Well, where I messed up and where the world found out about this, I talked to Charlie about it a little bit then. You could hear me on the tape, and I just heard the tape last year for the first time. But you could hear us talking a little bit on it, and they kind of praying a little. And they come in the room, they got the tape recorder out. Then by that time, the sheriff was there. Now, this was a big deal. 2 rednecks getting abducted by a UFO, by an alien. So, yeah, the sheriff's going to come so he can get his laughs too. But he listened to that tape. And now, I couldn't hear the tape, but I could see him listening to it then.
Well, let's take a break right here. I got to take my break, Calvin. Perfect spot to do it. And we'll just pick up right where we're leaving off right now. Our guest tonight is Calvin Parker. This is Fade to Black. We're talking about the Pascagoula incident. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Calvin, this is just an amazing, amazing event tonight on the show. We'll pick up where we're leaving off when we return. Stay with us. Welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. You can follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. TweetDeck is down tonight, but I'm kind of trying to stay up on Twitter. I know you guys are going crazy, but I don't have TweetDeck. And our guest tonight is Calvin Parker, talking about the Pascagoula incident that happened back in 1973 with Charles Hickson. And you guys are now at the Sheriff's Department, Jackson County, right?
Right.
And now the sheriff comes in, and they taped you and Charles talking. And you guys were separated up until this point, but they happen to get you guys in a room. They run a tape recorder. You guys are talking about what had happened, and now the sheriff has listened to this tape. He walks in the room, right? Have I got everything kind of in line?
You got it exactly right. Now, this sheriff was known to be a hard-nosed sheriff. I mean, he was strictly by the book, and he didn't play around any. But I seen a soft spot in him that night because he actually walked over and just kind of put his hand on my shoulder. And it looked like he felt really sorry for me. I guess I was 18 years old and upset and just wanting to get out and go home.
Let me jump in, Calvin. I wanted to ask you about the the now famous photograph of you and Charles, and you guys are sitting next to each other. The black and white photograph that went out across the media. Charles is one thing, but your face in that picture, you were not happy, were you?
No, I sure wasn't. Number one, I didn't like all the attention. Number two, that was as far as I was concerned, a crime that was committed against us.
Right.
That was like a home invasion, except it was an invasion off the fishing bank.
Right.
I've explained it like if you're sitting in your living room watching TV, somebody kicks the door down, come in and gets you and takes you to a van and examines you and throws you out. I mean, they'd go to jail if they could find them.
That's right.
But the one thing I got against the law, they don't know how to treat something like this. The scene where this happened should have been taped off, and they ought to had somebody out there until they could have got experts out to look at the crime scene. So, and I think all that's changing now where they do.
Right. But, incredible. Okay, so the sheriff feels, a little bit of empathy for you at this moment. What happens next? Yeah, what happens next?
Well, he said, look, y'all go on back home, get some rest, and I'll see y'all tomorrow. I thought, oh, Lord, we're going to go through this again tomorrow. But we went out, got in the car, and we drove home and went in the house. And, of course, his wife was sitting there and offered me something to eat. And I said, I don't believe, I'm too hungry. I think I'm going to go to bed. I didn't say a word what was happening. So when I got into the room that I was renting from him, there was a bathroom in that room. And there was a gallon of bleach sitting on the bathtub. And I remember as a child, my mother would wash us in bleach if we got poison ivy or something.
Mm-hmm.
And that and black draw used to cure everything you had. So I got in the shower and I took all my clothes off, my shoes, and climbed in the shower and I poured this bleach over the top of my head, just rubbed it in. Then I washed it off. Because in my mind, I was still thinking about these that Apollo mission where they quarantined the whole crew for 7 days. So, and I didn't want to give nobody nothing. I didn't want to share whatever they might have done to me with them. So then when I got out of the shower, we had paper bags back in and not plastic ones. I went and got a paper bag and I put all my clothes in there, even my shoes, put everything in there, and I carried them to the dumpster outside. And I threw them in that dumpster. Well, I went back in and laid down and thought I was going to try to sleep some, but I couldn't sleep, you know. I was just keyed up from what had happened, trying to figure out what did happen. And because at the moment, you know, if somebody told me aliens come down and abducted me, I would have laughed at them, you know. I would have told them, no, that ain't what happened. But, you know, something did happen. And we got up the next morning early, and me and Charlie left going to work. Well, the old car was still running a little bit rough, you know, because I hadn't fixed it from that night. And we got to the shipyard. Now, take it for granted, this is just my second day there, so I didn't have no idea how many cars was supposed to be at the shipyard. But it was hundreds, and the roads was even blocked going into this place. And I thought, dang, they got a lot of people working here.
Right.
We got out and brassed in, went to our workstations, and then we heard our names called on the intercom to come to the office. Well, of course, I didn't know what was going on, but we did. We went to the walked up, went into the office, and the owner of the shipyard was there. He said, y'all gonna have to do something. I said, well, we was trying to work. What in the world you want us to do? He said, y'all got to do a press release because we can't use our phones. We can't conduct business. They've got my business shut down. I said, now, who is they? He said, the press, from whatever happened to y'all. I have an attorney, is what he said, for the shipyard. I'm calling him right now. I want y'all to sit down and talk to him and work up a press release and give it to this guy, and he's going to give a press release and get these people off our back. So he called his attorney in, and Charlie talked to him. I still was staying with my story. I didn't see nothing.
Right.
You know, I figured if anybody was going to be an idiot, I was going to make Charlie look like an idiot.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyhow, they worked up a press release. Well, about that time, the sheriff showed up. He said, look, guys, I got to thinking about what you said. And I must have said this in this tape. I was concerned about when I was talking to Charlie under this tape. You know, I was kind of concerned about everybody getting bacteria infection and all. He said, I think we need to take y'all to the emergency room, get you examined, get you a clean bill of health. Well, we loaded up with the sheriff and one of his deputies. They drove us to the Jackson County Singing River Hospital. And I won't never forget that day because actually I was glad to be in a hospital for a little bit. And Dr. Bosco was the doctor to come out. And he examined our arms where these puncture wounds was. He did blood work. He did, I guess, forensic stuff, scraped their skin and things like that. Then he said, y'all safe to go, so y'all can go on. We walked back out and got into the car. And he said, now we're going to Keesler to get y'all checked for radiation. Keesler Air Force Base is in Biloxi, Mississippi. And that was the only place, I guess, they could check us. So we was driving. It's about 30 minutes from where we were. This car turned on the blue lights, and buddy, he was going.
Mm.
And I had him kind of worried in. I said, my father used to work when I found out I was going to get checked for radiation. And I said, my father worked for the Atomic Energy Commission out at Groom Lake. That's Area 51. They exploded these nuclear bombs underground. And I remember him having to wear a badge, and they would come in our house every now and then and check us also as a kid for radiation. I said, that's some bad stuff. It'd probably kill everybody around it eventually. Well, that just kind of scared that deputy, and he zoomed on in.
Right. What's that, Calvin? Let me stop you right there for a second. When you first got to the shipyard, you said that there was a whole lot of was that the press? Was that what was at the shipyard? Was that action, from the press and the media?
That was the press. And I've never seen something go out that fast.
Wow.
Now, I don't know how they got the story.
Who leaked it? Yeah, who leaked it?
Well, I eventually figured it out later on. The sheriff said he didn't tell nobody. And for years, I thought Charlie did, and I wouldn't even talk to Charlie after this. But back in the 70s, everybody was nosy, and they had these scanners, little handheld scanners they'd carry around. And they'd monitor the police department, and they'd monitor the fire department and the ambulances, because they just pure nosy. And I'm sure that when the sheriff department called that in, somebody probably picked it up on one of them little scanners.
So you think that over the scanners, somebody said alien abduction at Shaw's shipyard?
Yes, sir. That's what I think happened. And when it did, it got... And you know how the press is. They like magnets to a piece of metal. When one of them gets on something, they all on it. And I just figured that that's what happened. Now, I don't know for sure that's the way it got leaked out, but I don't think the sheriff did. And I blamed Charlie for a long time for even calling the Keesler in the sheriff department.
Right. Well, see, the other thing, the local newspapers and television stations, there's always somebody listening to the police scanners, right? And so once the media even got a whiff of it, it's just going to go crazy from there. And that's exactly what happened, wasn't it?
That's exactly what happened. But, I feared it was kind of like anything else, Everybody wants their 5 minutes, and then it's over with. You never hear about it again.
Right.
This story is still alive after 45 years, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But now that it's getting bigger, it's my fault that it is. I brought attention to it.
Well, you needed to tell your story, man. You needed to do it. And speaking of that, let's get back into the car. Okay, so you guys are heading over to Biloxi.
We went right in. He never even stopped when we got to the gates at Keesler. They had an MP escort us on to the back. And I noticed 6 men sitting out there in hazmat suits. Excuse me. We pulled up, and there was some guys in hazmat suits back there, and they motioned us to get out of the car. And the sheriff and the deputy was going to also get out of the car, and they pushed them back in it. Got us up on a loading ramp like at a warehouse, and they started running things around their body and checking us. Then I heard one of them say, "All clear," and they all started pulling their suits off, and they said, "Now look, they want to talk to you. There's a conference room in the back of this hall, and they want to see y'all back there." Now, when they said in the back of the hall, I got a lot of exercise that night walking. That was the longest hall I've ever seen in my life. And we got back there, and there was a big conference room, and it was full of officials, military officials. They had all the mayors from the local 3 counties, cities there, had the police departments, the sheriff departments from each county. and it was full. And they started interrogating us, or not really an interrogation, wanting to know what had happened. And they asked me, I said, well, y'all better talk to Charlie. This is his baby now, you know. I don't know anything. And I tried to stay by the story. So Charlie told them what had happened, and they was really nice. They said, well, thank y'all, and we'll see you later. So y'all can go. And we left, and we went back to the shipyard. Now, by the time we got back to the shipyard, Dr. John Allen Hynek and Dr. Harder was there. And I asked his son, Paul, the other day. I seen him at a conference in Phoenix. I said, do you know how that man got to where we were that fast? I said, you'd have to have a rocket in order to get back then from wherever y'all lived, he said California, to where we are now. I said, that's amazing to me how he got there that fast. He said, well, he had to be somewhere over there working. But, you know, Project Blue Book was already over with.
Right.
And he flew down on his own dime, him and Dr. John Allen Harder. So when we got back to the shipyard, he said, I know y'all tired. I want you to have a clear mind. Exactly where did this happen? I'm going out to look at the site tonight, and I want to talk to y'all in the morning. Now, my plans wasn't to talk to nobody, and I had no idea who he was.
Right, and let me hold on for you. Let's pump the brakes for a second. This is a whole lot for me to take in, let alone for you at the age of 18. Right? This is a lot of events unfolding. The night before this abduction happened, this is the next day. You wake up, you go to work, the press are there, you got to make a press release with this attorney. Then you guys go to the hospital. Then you guys make it over to Biloxi. Now you get back to the shipyard. This is all the next day, and J. Allen Hynek is there to meet you?
The very next day. I mean, he's there in person.
Holy mackerel. And
like I say, I seen his son. I thought he might could tell me, how he got there that quick, but he didn't know.
Wow. So this is all the next day. And looking back, now you know who J. Allen Hynek is. So now you know how remarkable and important this is. If he's already there to greet you guys. Was he's pretty cool, wasn't he?
Oh, I like Dr. Hynek. And that's like I told that son of his, did he ever just put his hands under his chin and sit there and stare at you like he was looking through you? And he said, well, that's pretty typical. So, he told us, he said, I want to go out and look at the site, and I need to talk to some people. And the sheriff actually agreed to take him out to where everything was, because he knew right where everything was and all, and show him the site. He told us to be nice, just to go home and get some rest, that he wanted us rested up. So we did that. While he went to look at the site, we went home, and I tried to get some rest. But at this time, I had my family, because I knew the news media was there. I had them to worry about, and I didn't call them. I was engaged to get married the next month. I didn't call her. I was just sitting there waiting everything out, because what do you say to somebody when you get them on the phone? The reason I didn't call is because I didn't want to alarm them, and I figured they thought as long as they didn't hear from me, there wouldn't be much said about it. But we went home, and supposedly I did try to sit down and eat a little bit. Charlie's wife had something cooked. Got up the next morning, and I throwed my bag in the trunk of my car. And on the way into work, they had a little auto parts store open. I stopped and got some plug wires, and put on my car before I got to work. So we left pretty early, and they opened early. So we got there, and sure enough, Dr. Alan Hynek and Dr. James Harder was there. And he pulled us in for the interview. And he was one of the nicest men I've ever met. You know, I felt comfortable talking to him because he didn't try to rush you for questions or anything. He just like sat down, like you say, we sat down on the couch talking.
Right.
And yeah, I've had people describe the book that we done. It's like sitting in a room. It's not like a book. It's like sitting in a room and you telling us the story. So, and that's kind of like it was with Dr. Hynek. So Dr. Hynek interviewed me first, and we sat there and talked a couple of hours probably. And while he was doing that, Dr. Harder was in the back with Charlie, giving him an exam. And then we just traded places. Charlie came up to see Dr. Hynek, and I went back to see Dr. Harder, and he checked the injection sites where we got the shots and all that. Then we got through, and he asked me, Dr. Hynek did, and the sheriff said, "What you gonna do?" I says, "Well, I'm going back home." I said, "This is the first day on the job. I got hired, fired, and got a physical all in one day."
Right.
They don't want us here because we're too interrupting their business cycle, and I don't blame them.
Right.
So anyhow, I had my clothes in the car, and I dropped Charlie off by his house, and I shagged out and went back into Laurel. And that's where I did, and I didn't talk to my family. I didn't want to say a word to them about it. They never asked me about it. They knew something was wrong, but my mother and my brother did call the sheriff, and he had told them that I was fine and kind of what was going on. So, you know, and he didn't tell me they called, but they told me that they had called him. So anyhow, I got home. I didn't talk about this to nobody. Tried to proceed with a normal life. Well, it was like the press turned over a bunch of bloodhound dogs to hunt me down. Because where I lived then, it was hard to find. I mean, we was stuffed in the back, a little shack back on 200 acres of land back there. And where I could get lost sometime going in.
Sure.
But they hunted me down. So I wouldn't talk to them. And I just couldn't bring myself, to talk to the press. I didn't want nobody to know. Because I was having a hard enough time then dealing with everything. So I really didn't want nobody to know what was going on. I didn't want my family to know. I didn't want my few little friends that I had to know. I mean, I just kind of kept it to myself.
Calvin, before we head to a break, which we got to do here in 2 minutes, the bag of clothes, right, that you put in the paper bag and put in the dumpster,
yes.
What happened to those?
I guess the trash man must have hauled them off, because I would have loved to have. Back then they didn't have DNA, but now they have DNA.
Right.
And I would have loved to have them examined by a true forensic scientist, and they could have picked up something.
Yeah, Dr. Hynek should have. You didn't tell Dr. Hynek where you put the clothes.
No, He was more interested in what happened. He actually went out to the site that night, talked to the bridge tender when they got him awake. Now, that bridge tender, he sits in a recliner with his back to the away from us, and they had to wake him up to talk to him to see if he'd seen anything, because he had to have the boredest job in the world, so he had a little TV in there.
Sure.
And he was sitting there watching it, and he wasn't paying no attention to what was going on behind. And he more or less said it. Well, look, I lay up here and I take a nap sometime, and they'll call me on the radio or blow a siren, and I'll let the bridge up and let everybody get by. And then somebody said, well, a reporter from the Rolling Stone says, well, they got this shipyard. They said they didn't see nothing on their cameras. I said, well, you idiots, they didn't have cameras back in. That was an abandoned shipyard. No, they didn't see nothing. They don't even have electricity in it.
Right, right.
All it was a little shack out there. And, it's just people reaching their own conclusions about things. And to make kind of a long story short, that's what really turned me off to talking about it. If I could have got up and told the story one time and them not change nothing up or not try to, back then, they really tried to ridicule you pretty bad.
Right.
I mean, nowadays they hammer you on Facebook pretty bad. I just don't say nothing. Most people, though, is pretty nice, but you get some that act like they was there with you and say you was on dope and drinking and everything else. Hell, and people don't know me from nobody else. They don't know what I was doing.
That's right. That's right. And Calvin, stay right there. Let's take our next break. Our guest tonight, Calvin Parker. Whew, man, I'm trying to take it all in, Calvin, and we got a lot more to talk about. We'll continue all of this.
Oh.
Yeah, we do. Right after this short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Amazing conversation tonight with Calvin Parker. Amazing, amazing. And now, Calvin, looking back, for me, like I said, I was about 10 years old when I was exactly 10. It was my birthday. And this unrolled. And when it did, it was on the news every night nationally. I can't speak for around the world, but it was the same situation going on. Every night for what seemed to be months. And, of course, Charles, I think he did the Tonight Show, didn't he?
He did with Johnny Carson.
He certainly did. And you were watching this start to unfold right in front of you. The press finds your place. You just described it at the back of 200 acres. They start to converge. How did it happen? Take me through it.
Well, I was out of a job, so I had to find another job, and the only thing I knew besides that was the oil field. So I had some connections to go back to work in the oil field, and the good thing about that, you had to travel sometime, and I was one of them that just volunteered to travel. So I just scooped my little family up and went to work, and we worked all over the United States. We traveled a lot. But they always seemed to show up, and when they would, I'd change jobs. Ain't no telling how many different types of jobs I had during the past. All I wanted to do was get married, have a family, have grandchildren, buy a house, and retire. And that's all I wanted out of life. I didn't want all this extra burden around me. And this worked out pretty good because I never talked about it to my family, not my wife, not my daughter, not my friends. And then one day we were at the house here. Now, we bought a house in right down from Pascagoula and live in a subdivision. And the people in the subdivision didn't even know my real name because I wouldn't never tell them. I've heard so many hey yous but I never told anybody my real name. I just kind of went by my middle name and all. And one day we had a neighbor die. And out of compassion for his wife and child, we went to the wake, and I signed a register at the wake. with my real name. So when I done that, I thought, oh, maybe nobody would notice it. We've had 2 or 3 people come up that was there from Texas. They said, "Are you the Calvin Parker?" I said, "The Calvin Parker? I guess that's my name. Why?" "Well, we want to hear about it." Well, then when 1 or 2 got to coming around, now I didn't talk about it. I said, "Well, look, this isn't a place to do nothing like this." Told my wife, "Go get in the truck, we're going to leave and go back home because I don't want to draw attention to us and his wife and daughter in there grieving."
Right.
So on the way home, my wife says, now this was just last year, and I forget what month it was, but she said, "Why don't you write a book?" I said, "I don't have an education. I'm not going to write no book on this. I've run from it all my life, and I don't need to be writing a book." Then she mentioned it again. I said, "Look, you get a ghostwriter and you want to tell them what to write, go ahead and write it." So, but I knew that wasn't going to happen. I was just telling her anything I could to get her to shut up.
Right.
So,
what's your wife's name?
Wynette. Dorothy Wynette, but we call her Wynette.
You call her Wynette? Okay. Did you, through those 45 years, did you ever tell her the whole story from beginning to end? Just sit down and go, "Okay, this is what happened"?
No.
Never did. So
never mentioned it. It caused a lot of hard feelings because I wouldn't talk about it. But back then, when we got married, I was 18. She was 16.
Mm-hmm.
And, her daddy pretty much a basket case when it came to me anyway. So I didn't feel like I needed to expose her to anything that she didn't need to be exposed to.
But she did know. She just didn't ask.
She did know. She did, out of respect for me. What I found out, she just didn't ask about it.
Now, what about, okay, but you had to deal with Charles, right? Charles is out there. He's doing TV shows. He's doing press. He's doing the news. He's in the paper. He's on the cover of the Inquirer for a couple of years. You know what I mean? That must have been everywhere for you. Every time you turn around, there's Charles Hickson.
Yeah, I know and that really made me mad because he was the one that actually kept this thing alive for a long time. And me and Charlie had a falling out over this whole deal because I didn't feel like it was nobody else's business at that time. And he wanted to talk about it, but I guess different people handle things a little different. And, he handled it by going out into the public and talking. And now that he did it, I'm glad he did. I can understand because he did kind of keep it alive. And I'm at a point in my life to deal with it a little better.
The story that he went out and I want to get to today. That's so we'll do that in just a second. But the way that he retold it and recounted it, do you feel was he accurate? Did he embellish? Did he change it, or was it pretty much exactly how it went down?
Well, I had this conversation with Philip one time. He's pretty accurate with the way it went down, but he kind of embellished it a little bit. And, he said he found a rock that he rubbed, and anytime he wanted to talk to them, they would come and talk to him. And, he did find a rock, but I was with him when he found that rock. It was just a pretty rock laying on the ground out there in the riverbed, and he picked it up, put it in his pocket. So he embellished a little bit of it, and I don't know if it was starting to go to his head or what it was, but he stayed pretty honest to what really happened.
And now, how about you? Let's talk about you over these last 45 years. Did you ever make contact again?
I did.
What happened? When did it happen? The first time?
1993.
93. 20
Yes,
years later. Okay.
This was May in 93. And actually, what had happened, I got up and told my wife, I said, look, I'm going to go fishing. I'll be back before dark because, since 73, I didn't stay out there at night too much by myself.
No.
I said, I'm going to the islands and I'll be back before dark. Well, I scooted off. It's about a 6-mile run to the island. And went out there and I was getting ready to fish. Now, this is where the bologna sandwich come in that I told you changed to a blondie sandwich.
Right.
And I was waiting on the tide, so I got my lunch out and I laid it. For some reason, I laid it down by me. And this is kind of funny. It come up, I just recently had a hypnosis session. And, it pulled some memories of that lunch back out. And I laid it there, and I was laying on my back looking up, and there was a big cloud. But you could see under this cloud the bottom of what appeared to be a spaceship. And they sucked me into this thing. And now, at the time that this all happened, I didn't know where the time went. And they pulled me up into this thing, and pretty much almost the same thing and the same ones happened. But I couldn't account for time from 11 o'clock that day to 3 o'clock the next morning. I got in the boat. When I woke up, it was dark, and I thought maybe I just fell asleep. But I didn't sleep from 11 o'clock that day to 3 the next morning. I run into my truck, and when I checked my time, it was 3. And I was bloody. Again, I had blood all over me. Well, that was bothering me. So I had told a friend, look, I got some time that I can't account for while I was fishing. And he kind of kept up with Charlie in these conferences and things like that. He said, there's a man I want you to talk to. He wrote a book on missing time. And I said, well, who was that? And he said, Bud Hopkins. Well, I didn't know Bud Hopkins from anybody.
Mm-hmm.
He said he's speaking in Tampa at a conference. Let's go over there. It's not a 12-hour ride. Let's go. So we went to Tampa, Florida, and got there, and they went to his room. I mean, they went to the conference. I wouldn't go in the conference. I didn't want to be recognized or nothing. And said that Calvin Parker wants to talk to you. And of course, Bud, he must have just lit up. He said, here's my room key. I'll be done here in a few minutes. So Bud Hopkins told us to go to his room and just wait on him. And when he got to the room, of course, I introduced myself. He introduced his. And again, he was kind of like Dr. John Allen Hynek. I didn't know him from anybody.
Nice guy, though.
Oh, Bud's a great guy.
Bud's a great guy.
And he said, look, Calvin, can I hypnotize you? I said, well, I don't know if you can or not, but why? He said, I want to see if I could pull some details out, pull some facts out. I said, look, there's only one way I'm going to agree to this. You don't make an idiot out of me.
Right.
I've been to Las Vegas and I've seen these floor shows. Where they hypnotize the first 3 or 4 rows and they make them do all kind of stupid stuff.
Make you bark like a dog. Yeah. Yeah, you don't want to do any of that stuff. I have the same thing. When it comes to that kind of stuff, Cal, I'm right with you. I'm just right there. So Bud's cool, and so what happened? Right there in the room, huh?
Oh, right in the room. So I agreed. I said, now look, Bud, here's the deal. There's a ball bat in the trunk of my car. And if you make me do something stupid, I'm going to tell this guy. Now, I'd never been hypnotized. I didn't know what it was about. I'm going to get this guy to get this ball bat and beat your brains out with it and then just hand it to me when I get up, and I'm going to take the blame.
Right.
Well, Bud kind of giggled and laughed a little bit. He said, you don't have to worry about nothing.
Right on.
Now, what I didn't know up until the day I wrote the book, this was a 2-hour session almost. And he had put a post-hypnotic suggestion in my head that I wouldn't remember this until it was time to remember it. Now, I always thought being hypnotized was a bunch of bull, but I was actually hypnotized. And when I did the book, I kind of mentioned to Philip, well, Bud Hopkins, he said, oh, I know Bud. He's a personal friend. I said, well, he tried to hypnotize me. He said he did. He said, let me see if I can find that tape. So he called Dr. Jacobs. Of course, Bud was dead then.
Right.
Dr. Jacobs called me and asked if he could send a tape. I said, sure, there's nothing on it anyway. I never was hypnotized.
That's what you thought.
Oh, that's exactly what I thought.
Oh, man. Okay, so David Jacobs sends you the tape.
Yeah, well, he sent it straight into Philip Mantle.
Right.
Well, Philip started transcribing the tape out, writing it all down. And it took a while because I spoke a little soft and so did Bud. Well, he emailed me a copy of the transcripts by the computer and asked me to look at them to see if I remembered them. I got into the first paragraph or two, and then my memory started coming back, and I stopped reading them because I didn't want something in my mind that I didn't remember happening or that wasn't there. And again, like I say, I met Bud Hopkins one time. He did this hypnosis session. So I didn't know the man. I didn't trust the man to start with. But anyhow, I stopped reading it. I went on the porch. I told my wife, I said, I wouldn't let you come in the room over there because I was trying to protect you. I said, but now that we're doing this book, I want you to go back and read that. And as I remember something, I'm going to tell you about it. And you tell me if it's true or not. I said, I just want the facts. So she came back, she was back in the room quite a while in my office and read it and come back up there. She was crying.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And she was really upset about all of it. Well, she kind of shut down, and wouldn't talk about it. Well, when I read it and found out what had happened, I had actually got into I didn't read it. My memory started. Linda Moulton Howe did an interview with me, and she is a tough investigative reporter. And she pulled out stuff and she jarred my memory with some things that she was saying. And it started coming back just like watching a film. And come to find out, when I did get down, when I remembered as much as I could remember, and I read the transcripts, it was just like Bud did with that post-hypnotic suggestion, that when I could handle it and could remember it, then my memory would come back. And when it started coming back is when I started writing the book. I sat down, Philip had called me when my wife was on to write a book, and he said, well, the press changes everything. And he made a lot of sense when he said this, why don't you put it in black and white, write a book? Then it's black and white and they can't change it. That's your legacy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that made a lot of sense because the UFO subject was getting pretty popular now, and I didn't figure anybody would think I was crazy. I was thinking that I didn't have too much longer to live, and I owed it to the people in the community where I lived in Jackson County, Pascagoula, the Gulf Coast, and to my family to do a book. I said, and I was thinking to myself, well, what harm can it do? So I told Philip, I said, look, Philip, I don't have the education to do a book. And if I do one, I don't want nothing changed. I don't want the spelling corrected. I don't want a punctuation mark put in. I want it to be me. I want it to be in my words. And he agreed to do that. And the man has stood 100% by his word.
Yeah. Philip is great, and the book is great. It's a great read. And everybody can just click on jimmychurchradio.com right there with Calvin Parker and go over and get yourself a copy of this. What I did want to ask you, though, it got away from me, Calvin. My next question was the best one of the night, and it's now gone. It just got away from me. Okay. So, versus what your wife read, with Bud Hopkins, and your memory and this book, did you go back and read Bud's transcript?
Yeah, and it was just because it wasn't making much sense to me when I did read it. But he had two separate events put into one, and it was rambled together. So that's when we got Kathleen
Martin,
right, to come down. She just left here just before we did the book, and she did a 3-hour hypnosis session on me and tried to unravel some of the things that was raveled in my memory there. Mm-hmm. So she separated the incidents, and she put incident in 73 and the one in 93, two different categories, and she separated them all out and made everything clear. And we found a lot of fact. We did a lot of fact hunting. She wouldn't lead you into a question. She would just say, and what else, or something like that. And she was great. I mean, she took her time and did a great job and really professional about it. And the only reason I would let her even do that, I met her at that UFO Congress in Phoenix, Arizona. Mm-hmm. We had a little booth set up there together, and we got pretty close. I got to talking to her. And then Philip thought I might need hypnotizing again. And I said, well, Kathleen does this. She's a professional. She does it for a living. Let's get her to see if we can do it. So when I first called her, she said, I have a really busy schedule and I don't have time. And then the next thing I knew, she called. She said, I'll be there tomorrow morning. So she flew down the next day, and we went through this hypnosis session at the house here. And she was here. She spent 3 days with me. And, we did a lot of fact hunting. Because that's like I told her, all I'm trying to do after all this time is figure out what really did happen. It don't matter to me what happened. It's figuring out what really did happen. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we really figured out exactly what all happened. But all her hypnosis thing is in this new book.
And we're going to talk. Let's, Calvin, can I get you to hang on for some overtime? I told you earlier.
Sure.
We're going to run out of time, right? And right. Sure enough, we're right there. I need to take a break, and there's so much more that has happened since since you started the new book. The new book has been the first book has been released. Now all of this new information is coming out that is going to be in the new book, and I actually want to go back and touch on some of these points that ended up happening since the release of the first book, which seems like that was just yesterday. Right, and here we are with the new book. When is it going to be finished? Do you have any idea?
Oh, it hit the market today.
Oh, it did. I thought it was next week. Okay.
No, October the 1st. You can order it through Amazon.
No. Okay. Well, see, I haven't got the new book yet. How did that happen?
I don't know. Hey, I sat down and I just got mine also, and I sat down and read it. And to be honest with you, I enjoyed it a lot more than I did the first book.
Well, we'll talk about that when we come back. Let's go ahead and take our break right here. Everybody is yelling for overtime. Well, they got it, Calvin. So let's take a quick break. This is Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, Calvin Parker. We're talking about the Pascagoula incident. What a conversation. Overtime is next. This is Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. Stay with us. Welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. The links for Calvin right there at jimmychurchradio.com. The new book just got released today. You can go and get both of yours right now by clicking. And now, Calvin, this is what I want to get into some of these new revelations. But the other part is you've been, staying in the background for 45 years. The support that you have now, when you go to a conference and everybody is there to say welcome, you're part of us. That's pretty cool, isn't it? I mean, the UFO community is very warm.
Oh, I love it. And I really didn't think I would when I started these conferences. I told Philip, the book came out last July. It's supposed to come out in September, but we released it a little early. And he said, well, you need to make a few conferences and, talk about the book. To be honest, I didn't figure I'd sell 10 copies and I'd have to buy them. And I was going to give one to each one of my family members, so I wouldn't have to sit down and tell them the story. But gosh, this book has went over the limits.
That's and it should. But that's the beautiful thing, Calvin, about our community is you can go and just be Calvin Parker. Just be yourself. Yeah. It's all good. Just come on out and hang out with us. That's all it is, isn't it?
That's it. And at these conferences, I didn't figure I'd like them. But every conference I went to, I have thoroughly enjoyed. And the last one was there in Phoenix. And gosh, I would get up. I'd stay up until 1 o'clock in the morning, and just visit with the people. They'd come by and want to talk. We set up a table. And I should have took 100 books because, I sold everything I had the first hour we was there. But I met some great people. I got to spend time with Paul Hynek, that's John Allen Hynek's son, Kathleen Martin, Travis Walton, and the story goes on.
I was watching all the pictures of you. I'm like, check Calvin out. Calvin's a rock star, and you didn't even know it. You didn't even know. And that's what I'm trying to say. We have been talking about you and what you went through and this extraordinary encounter for years. And now I've had the chance to sit and talk to you about it. Now, Travis Walton. Now, he's a great friend. I just hold him dear, right? Travis is amazing. Did you get a chance to sit down and talk to Travis?
We did. Now, I've known of Travis because, his thing happened pretty close to the same time ours did. And then I even went to the movie to watch his movie, Fire in the Sky. And I actually been wanting to talk to Travis. So when I met him at the conference, his table was right back behind ours. My wife had some old cheap jewelry made up trying to sell it there and all, just to have something to do. So I'd go back and sit and talk with Travis, and gosh, he's amazing. He's just a warming person, and he's quiet, and he's not out for the publicity or nothing. He's just out there. He's just an everyday, quiet, good-going person.
I got one word for Travis. cool.
Exactly.
He's like the cool side of the pillow.
And he had his guitar with him, and they went up and had a little sing-along. I was actually going to go up and join them on the top steps, but I got to feeling bad that night.
Oh, man. You know what? Travis and I, this is a couple of months ago, we sat down and played some guitar. And you know what we sang? You know what I sang?
No telling.
I sang Lucille. By, by
George.
Kenny.
Kenny Rogers.
Kenny Rogers. I had to sing Lucille. I sang Lucille with him, man. Don't make me do it now, but I did it then. Now, so did Travis ask you any questions? I know it's private conversation, but the both of you had two extraordinary abduction experiences. Did you compare notes a little bit?
No, we really didn't. We mostly talked about the people that we met since this has happened.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, both of us, I've met some fantastic people. I've got out and got friends now, you know, all through this community that I just love to death. And we stay in touch, you know. My book is open. I got everybody get the social media stuff keeps everybody in touch. Most everybody's got my phone number. I just got a call from like Paul today, George Knapp, you know, people like that, and just want to say hi sometime. And it's great because I'm not a people person, but they make me feel like a people person. And I like that feeling for a change because, you know, I'm getting older.
Mm-hmm.
And as I told everybody, I got an expiration date on my head. You know, everybody does.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I'm glad this has happened.
Now, some of the witnesses that were around have started to come forward, and that's got to make you feel pretty good. Take us through that. Who approached? Did they do it through you, through Philip, through social media? How did this happen?
Actually, Philip is the one that they go to because I've been so busy going here and there. But Philip's like a bloodhound when he gets on the track. I did a news with Fox News. And somebody put under there, the first one that came forward, they put up under the caption, you know, where you write a remark. Well, my mother seen that the night that it happened, but she has never talked about it, but she wants to meet Mr. Parker. Well, that wasn't the lady that did it. That was Marie Blair. That was her daughter. Well, it took forever. Philip got on it like a bloodhound, and he found Trace Blair, which was her daughter, and begged her for Maria's phone number. And eventually she gave it up, and that's where it all got started. So Maria, everybody criticized her, said, oh, she just wants the attention and wants her 5 minutes. That ain't the case. Maria didn't come to us. We went to her. And she sat down and told the story. Now, recently, her husband was and I'm talking about 2 weeks ago, and he always said, don't tell nobody that people think you crazy. And he's never admitted to see anything, but the man was in kind of on his deathbed, and he told him to get the camera out. He wanted to say something, and he sent Philip and I a video of that did happen that night, and he also seen it, and he just wanted to clear the air because he didn't want his wife to be the only one to, look like she was crazy or something.
What did Maria see?
She seen the craft when it landed, and then she actually seen one of the aliens from the craft. But this one was in the water when she seen it. And, that's kind of strange, and it corresponded with a Coast Guard report. Because 2 days after that happened, the Coast Guard was called out, and that's all documented in the book to a report. And the guys, the crew team on the 5 different crew members, seen something under the water, and they actually took something they grabbed and bumped it under the water, and it was a UFO. And that's documented in government files right there. And that's all in the book. That's some of the people that was, talking about it. And then there was a crane operator that was working across the river running a crane. Well, on these gantry cranes, you set up real high, and he seen the thing when it landed. They was busy working, so he couldn't sit there and study it. He didn't know what it was, but he actually physically seen it when it landed. Then we got a probation officer and a preacher. The probation officer was driving on Highway 90 across a bridge, and he seen it, and that's law enforcement there.
Right, right.
And then a preacher witnessed the whole thing. He was down here doing a revival, and for a preacher to come out with something like that, that's got to be serious. And it was 2 or 3 other ladies in here, and they all in. Every one of them's in the new book, and their testimony. Matter of fact, Irene Scott did the interview with them, and she's a good writer and wrote down all their testimonies and all, while Philip worked on other things. But it's a lot of good information that came out of this book, and some of it I didn't even know about. Like, I knew about the witnesses because we all got together and, had a little interview over there together, and the news did a clip on them when we had that, and I did a book signing, and they all came to that, and we all got to sit down and talk. They good, credible people, and they not there for the fame or nothing like that. They just wanted to tell their story, and they felt like it was time to tell it. And I believe each and every one of them. And if I didn't, I'd be the first one to say, well, they didn't see that.
Right, right. And I'm so happy that all of this has happened. I mean, you need it. I mean, you need it personally. There's got to be times where you go, man, maybe I'm just crazy. And I get that thought, and you need the support from those witnesses. And I think, and this is the question, I think that one of the reasons why so many are okay with talking about it is what has happened in the last 2 years with the UFO subject in the media. It wasn't like this in 1973. Today,
absolutely
right?
Not.
Today, it's okay, right?
Yeah, I mean, look at the History Channel, that Ancient Alien and things like that. And actually, the government's starting to come out a little bit. And I know if President Trump seen one, he would tweet about it, because he tweets about everything.
I said the same thing. He'd be the first person to tweet.
Yeah, so I watch his tweets pretty regular sometimes. He's his own worst enemy at times.
What do you think? What do you think about the Navy talking about this, and the Senate getting briefed on it, and of course Tucker Carlson talking to President Trump about UFOs? It's never been this kind of party.
No, it hadn't been, and it's coming out. Actually, I went on Water's World on Fox News, and I was treated with a lot of great respect from Jesse Waters that does that show.
Right.
Now, he told me we got into it, and he said, well, we're going to have to cut you short a little bit. We got some breaking news. And I figured something bad might have happened somewhere. And he said, no, Ernie and Bernie come out of the closet on Sesame Street. So he told me that. I looked at his cameraman. I said, don't cut that camera off. I'll get you fired if you do. I'm going to finish my interview. I didn't come this far and fly this far not to finish what I started here. But, Jesse heard me when I was talking to him, and he told him just keep the the breaking news can wait a little bit.
Yeah, Bernie and Ernie can wait.
Yeah, I believe they can too. I didn't even know they was in the closet.
I thought they slept in separate beds. I'm kind of freaking out right now, Calvin.
Yeah, but that was the breaking news, and it was actually kind of. I asked my daughter. I said, "Did you know Bernie and Ernie was in the closet?" She said, "Who is that?" That's a Sesame Street.
Oh man. Okay. All right. Let's get back on track here. Bernie and Ernie. They did freak me out when I was a kid. I kind of wondered about that a little bit. I didn't know it was in that direction, but I did feel a little funky about Bernie and Ernie.
Yeah.
But the other part of about this, where down in Mississippi, I mean, it's the same everywhere in the South. Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi. Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia, Alabama, certainly Florida. You keep the family business at home. That no matter what goes on out there, what goes on here stays here. And for those witnesses that you're talking about right now, the crane operator, or law enforcement, or the preacher, this stuff, you keep that stuff, inside. Now, because of the way the media is starting to treat this, and Fox and CNN and the newspapers, now people are a little more comfortable in coming forward. And that's what we can be really thankful for, right? Because they didn't come forward in 1973, did they?
No, and if you had mentioned it in 1973, especially down here on the South, you might have found yourself hanging from a tree somewhere.
That's right. That's right.
People thought you was crazy.
Yeah. Kind of joke about it, but I get what you're saying there. And then the other part, I wanted to ask you about this earlier, with Charles going out there, on the Tonight Show and all over the news. Now, comedians were making fun of you guys, right? And all of those jokes, and that's exactly why people don't talk, because you don't want to be, you don't want to be the subject of somebody's jokes. And that went on for a long time, didn't it? It must have been hard to listen to.
The bad part about it, this is, to me and a lot of other people, this is no joke to me. I mean, it's something real serious. And I'm still in the quest to find answers. That's all I want. And when I find them, I'll go ahead and retire and go back to fishing.
Right. Well, let's hope you get those answers. I'm still trying to find them myself. The puncture wounds. I wrote that down here. The puncture wounds. Did the drugs or whatever was injected in you, did the blood ever come back and show what that was?
They kept, Dr. Bosco had the records and all that, and he was fixing to turn them loose with my permission, and I wanted a copy of them. Now, this is before I was even thinking about the book.
Right.
And then Camille came through, and about 80% of the coast had, I know we had 8 foot of water in our house, and back then they didn't put the records on electronic on a hard drive or nothing. It was all hand records. See, that was from 73, so and Camille came in 2005, and they was in the process of transferring everything, all the records over to computers, and they got destroyed before then. So it's just been one thing right after another.
Wow.
But Dr. Bosco's 95 now, and he's still alive. And he comes to he sent his grandson to the book signing for me to sign a copy for him. And his grandson is also a doctor now. And he asked me, this was just recently, a couple of days ago, if I would get by and see him. And I'm making plans to go see him now.
the closing part of this for you, how are you today? And I know we've kind of discussed it a little bit, but if the opportunity happened again, right? Another craft, another being, how would you be okay with it?
No. Either way, I mean, it would be a little different if they would come and ask my permission.
Right.
I might sit down and talk to them. But I've accepted what has happened now. And actually, it's been good for me. It's been good for my wife. One thing, I set her down. And, well, she's heard a lot of these shows and all, but sat through news interviews. And she's been right there by my side through the whole thing. And I set her down and we covered the detail. So that opened up the honesty thing for 45 years. You don't tell a woman something, they get kind of scorn at you.
That's right.
And we never really took a vacation. And to us, these conferences is like going on vacation somewhere. I pay her plane ticket and her way, and they pay mine. You know how that goes. And you get a little thing to speak, and they give us money to get out and go somewhere. So we got to spend time together that we normally hadn't spent together. I know we went to Laughlin, Nevada, to McAllen, Texas, to Ozark Mountains, and some of these places we drive, and then to Phoenix, and it just continued. And I was supposed to go to the UK, and I got sick. Why you? I mean, that's the ultimate question, right? I'm sure you've asked yourself that. Why
Every
you?
day. Yeah, why you? And that's the first question. And the second one is, what do they want, Calvin?
Well, I've thought a lot about this, and I'm thinking, how we used to, or not me, but they used to experiment with animals for medical reasons and things like this. And I think that maybe we just a medical experiment to them, and to see if they might can adapt right here on Earth, because I'm not for sure that they could if they came.
Right. Did you and Charles get a chance to, bury the hatchet?
No. Last time I seen Charles Hickson, he let this stuff just throw him into bankruptcy, more or less. And I seen him one time. His son called and said they turned the electricity off at the house, wanted to know if I had the money to pay it. And I did let him have it. And, I didn't see Charlie no more after that. He died just shortly.
What year was that? What year did his electricity get shut off?
That was just before he died. I was trying to think of the day he died. He's been dead 7-8 years.
Right.
But he let this stuff, he went from a productive human being to following, and everybody will tell you the same thing. It's no money in writing books about this subject.
Nope.
Or hadn't been or anything. And that's like me. I didn't do this for the money. What little bit of money that we get from our book sales and stuff, I mostly go back to charities. And then I donate to my community where I live and to Jackson County. And then, I try to get it to St. Jude's. So I want to, it's not the money thing. I already had my living made. So I think it's good just to donate that little bit and have a clear conscience about it.
And you just never got a chance. Do you wish you could kind of go back in time and straighten, Charles out and maybe, put all the stuff behind you?
I do every day.
Right.
I regret not sitting down and speaking to Charlie. Us having a conversation kind of like we having tonight. because after that day, and I thought he was the one that broke the story, that pretty well just wound us up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, me and Charlie never was friends, but he was friends with my father. And back before he even moved to Pascagoula, before I came down, we used to me and his children was all real close. And we would all go fishing on camping trips together on a regular basis. And, it was a lot of fun.
All that stopped.
All that stopped.
That ain't right. That ain't right. Well, the book is out. The new book is out. Finally, we get to hear from you, Calvin. And this was just a wonderful, wonderful conversation tonight. I look forward to not only meeting you and hanging out and break some bread, but get you back on the show and let's have another conversation. You down for that?
I'm down for that. By then, the other book will be kind of circulating around a little bit.
I can't wait to get it. And do me a favor. Tell Wynette thank you for letting you stay up late.
Oh, I will. I think she's asleep in her on the couch.
That's what I'm talking about. Calvin, you are amazing, and this has just been very special, not only for myself tonight, but for our entire audience. Keep doing what you're doing. Your feet are on the ground, man. Don't change, and I look forward to the next time. Thank you so much, Calvin.
Oh, I'm looking forward. Just anytime you get ready, get your book, read it, and figure out what you want to ask, and we'll do this again, because I thoroughly enjoy this.
Thank you so much, man. And you know what? I knew it was going to be like this, Calvin. I knew that, but let's pull it back a little bit so we can save some for the next conversation.
There you go.
Calvin Parker. Thank you so much, Calvin. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Calvin Parker. Now, the links are right there at jimmychurchradio.com. It'll take you straight to Flying Disc Press. And I do want to thank Mr. Philip Mannell over in the UK, not only for getting Calvin on the show, but publishing the books and bringing all of this stuff forward. It is very important for us and the community. And again, the links are over at jimmychurchradio.com. Wow, what a conversation tonight. I don't even know where to start. I need to digest this and get through it all. But that was just an amazing conversation. What a great guy, right? Calvin Parker made me laugh too many times. Very serious subject, but just made me laugh. He is all right. Calvin Parker. Tomorrow night, Tony Topping is here, live from the UK. Full life of contact experiences, and I'm going to save the details of all of that for our conversation tomorrow night. But all the links for Tony are right there at jimmychurchradio.com. So we have 2 first-time guests this week. And then, of course, Thursday night is another Fader night with open lines all night long. With that, I'm going to get out of here. Great night back after our weekend in Palm Springs. Calvin Parker. Fade to Black's executive producer is Rita Camarion. Show is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee, Dennis, and Bob. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vito, and Mark D. Kobar. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy. SpaceboyMusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. Syndication is KGRA, The Planet. This broadcast owned and copyrighted 2019 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. Thank you, Calvin Parker. Amazing, amazing conversation. Until tomorrow night with Tony Topping, I want everybody to be safe. Go Beckley Tepe.